Jai Guru, everyone.
Hi,
Jai
Guru.
Guru.
And welcome to another episode of Autobiography of a Yogi, line by line. We are on chapter 23 still, and we're on part 2. And we have the whole team with us today. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Are we ready to delve in?
So ready.
Pronto.
Yes.
Now.
He's got his
Good.
book. For those who are just listening, Priyank picked up his autobiography. He's ready to go. But before
Yes,
we delve
always ready.
into this
Yeah.
section, Mike, would you just remind us what we covered last week?
And we started chapter 23 last time. It's called I Received My University Degree. And it was about the final examinations. And there was a professor who told Mukunda that he's never gonna pass his class. And then Mukunda had an ingenious trick where he didn't write his name on the test, and then the professor let him pass because he didn't know it was his test. And then Mukunda described how he passed all the other tests with help of a friend, and then why he wasn't spending a lot of time on college, because he spent all his time with his guru in his hermitage, and he described his hermitage life, and it was beautiful. But I have a feeling in this part today there will be a bit of a twist.
There is, because one day
Mm-hmm.
he's at the ashram with Sri
Mm-hmm.
Yukteswar, and he's putting on his shoes. It's 11 o'clock at night to leave. Mukunda's putting on his shoes, and he's about to go home. And Sri Yukteswar questions him very gravely about when his AB examinations start. Mukunda says that they start in 5 days. And Sri Yukteswar says, well, I hope you're in readiness for them. And little Mukunda, I love this line in the autobiography. It says, transfixed with alarm, I held one shoe in the air. You could just imagine this scene, Guruji's got this shoe in his hand and he's protesting now. He's saying, sir, you know that my days have been passed with you rather than with the professors. How can I bring myself to enact a farce by appearing for those difficult finals? So you get a real insight here about how Mukunda viewed his exams and his studies. He thought they were a farce, really, for him to be able to go and take them. What do you think, Priyank?
Definitely. Just one quick point about the shoe. There's a footnote which says the disciple always removes his shoes in an Indian hermitage. I remember when I brought a friend of mine, an Indian friend, to the center, and we just walked in together. And he said, "Whoa, what are you doing?" I said, "Come on, the center's this way." And he said, let's take our shoes off." And then he insisted on taking his shoes off at the door. And I was like, "Oh wow, things are very different to what I've been used to now." But he obviously is new to it.
That's really beautiful, though, isn't it? In that way, because you're really showing a lot of respect for the space that you're in, and yeah, I like that. You do find that a lot in temples, don't you? They have a place for shoes, but we don't have that in SRF. We can keep our shoes on. So Mukunda's putting on his shoes, but he gets stopped by a comment. He's obviously not expecting it from Sri Yukteswar. And Sri Yukteswar turns his eyes very piercingly on Mukunda and tells him that you must appear. And his tone was coldly peremptory. Priyank, I think you had a good point about this moment.
Yeah, I think Sri Yukteswar kind of read what Mukunda had intended. Mukunda probably thought, I've been with Sri Yukteswar, there's obviously no way I'm going to pass the exams. There's no point in me even attending. And I'll leave it to God and Guru's kind of attitude to his education as he's done up to now. So he was probably intending to do that, but Sri Yukteswar kind of called that out and said very coldly and very piercingly, you must appear for those exams.
I'm not so familiar with how the education system works there, but I don't think there's an equivalent in the one that I was brought up in where you just finish your normal courses, but then you don't do the final exam. Then I think he wouldn't get a degree in the end then, right? So because he made this promise that he would finish school. So maybe this something that people do, that they finish the courses and not get the degree because it's not necessary. I'm not sure about that.
And we're going to see in the next episode a little bit more insight as to Sri Yukteswar's kind of knowing of what is going to happen and his confidence in what's going to happen. So we see a little bit of that here, where he's quite stern, and he probably sees that if he does, everything's going to be for naught. Maybe he's pulling strings in the background to make sure that he does pass through this moment in his life smoothly. And he's probably looking at him thinking, I'm not doing this for nothing, go, you have to play your part.
Because I think, to your point, Mike, I think he would probably not be able to get the degree if he didn't attend the exam. Whereas if you attend the exam but don't do that well, there could be some maneuverability. Or if you attend the exam and Guruji or Sri Yukteswar kind of like plants the thoughts of what you need to write, then obviously that's great. But if he doesn't attend, he's almost certainly not going to get his university degree, which Sri Yukteswar has already said that people in the West will be more receptive to you when you go there if you have a graduate degree.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes all we have to do is do our best and show up, do our part, as you said, Chris, and then the rest is up to God and gurus. And yeah, that's what Sri Yukteswar was saying, isn't it? You must show up, you must appear. And he also says that you don't want to give cause for people criticizing you in your family about your preference for the ashram life, and just promise me that you'll be present for the exams and answer them the best way you can. Yeah, Mike.
Just when I read that the first time, I was thinking Sri Yukteswar is like hacking out a plan again. There's something brewing in the background here.
But at the same time, he's not being occultish about it. There's nothing hidden or secret about what he's trying to say to reason with Mukunda. It's actually quite practical, and I can relate to it. I'm sure we all can, because really, what is he saying here? He's sort of saying you have a duty, your duty to other people, and that's quite a relatable thing to us all. So I quite like this little moment of almost realistic and realism between the two.
Right, but I feel like if it wasn't Sri Yukteswar, it was some other person who would have said that, who can't make a miracle happen in the background. Would have been a much harder sell, like starting study 5 days before the exams.
I also feel like there's a nice reminder in here from Sri Yukteswar, even if you're really pursuing the spiritual life, you still have to do your worldly responsibilities. You still have to show up for whatever you've signed up for, if that's work, if that's study. You have to go and do your best, and that's it. But
do the minimum in this case.
Well,
best is a relative. Yeah.
Well, we'll find out next why I think Sri Yukteswar and God helps Guruji so much through the exams. But for little Mukunda, when he finds out this news that he has to go, he starts crying uncontrollably. He says, uncontrollable tears were coursing down my face. You can just imagine he's kind of bawling his eyes out. And he said that he felt like Sri Yukteswar's command was unreasonable, and that his interest in his exams was belated. And then he says, I will appear if you wish it, he says with a sob. And I love this line because it just perfectly captures the guru-disciple relationship. Like, whatever you want me to do, no matter if I think it's unreasonable, if I think it's belated, if I don't want to do it, if I'm really upset about it, I'll do it because you've asked me to. And there's no question, there's no argument. It's just, okay, I'll go.
Yeah, even though Mukunda in this current state, his emotions, I guess, would be inflamed. They're kind of coming out by the tears that we see, and he can't quite see what Sri Yukteswar can see. He still has that surrender, complete surrender. You're right in saying it is a lovely moment, and ultimately has faith in the guru, knowing what's best for him, which I guess is good for us to think we can't really see the future and everything that unfolds, but our gurus can.
Yeah, and having that trust and that surrender. I liked it when you said the word surrender. Yeah, absolutely. And then Mukunda just reminds Sri Yukteswar that there isn't any time left to prepare. It's like a little aside, isn't it? Like, I'll go, but there's no time for preparation, just so you know. And then he mutters to himself that he's going to fill the pages with Sri Yukteswar's teachings in answer to the questions.
Can anything really be to yourself in the presence of Sri Yukteswar?
No. Yeah. So I assume that Guruji goes home, and then he says that he enters the hermitage the following day at his usual time, and he presents his bouquet. He's obviously gone to pick his flowers as usual, and he mournfully presents them to Sri Yukteswar, and Sri Yukteswar just laughs at his woebegone air. And Sri Yukteswar says, Mukunda, has the Lord ever failed you at an examination or elsewhere?
I love the spirit of this line. Lord, has the Lord ever failed you? It's like it's not really a question, is it? It's a rhetorical point that he's doing. And it kind of applies to all of us, doesn't it? Because the Lord never fails us. Even if we're going through tests and trials, it's not because God has forsaken me. It's because those trials are essentially for our own good, right? So this line is one you could kind of repeat to yourself through all your troubling phases of your life. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, 100%. And I think a similar line was uttered by Mukunda himself when it was about his high school degree, when he was much more optimistic. And he also had a friend who helped him through the examinations. And this time seems to be a much bigger step. That's maybe why he's a bit more intimidated by those exams.
Yeah, in chapter 11 in the the Vrindavan chapter, when Ananta kind of challenged Mukunda to go to Vrindavan without any money and see all the sights and come back, Mukunda kind of did something similar in terms of his reflection as he did here. But Mike, do you want to read that out?
I accept the challenge. No hesitation was in my words or in my heart. Grateful memories flashed of the instant beneficence. My healing of deadly cholera through an appeal to Lahir Mahashaya's picture. The playful gift of the 2 kites on the Lahore roof. The opportune amulet amidst my discouragement in Bareilly. The decisive message through the sadhu outside the courtyard of the Pandit's house in Benares. The vision of Divine Mother and her majestic words of love, her swift heed through Master Mahashaya to my trifling embarrassments, the last-minute guidance that had materialized my high school diploma, and the ultimate boon, my living master from the mist of my lifelong dreams. Never would I admit my philosophy unequal to any tussle on the world's harsh proving grounds. Yeah, quite a list.
That's lovely. Thank you for finding that, Priyank. It's true, isn't it? I feel like in my life, I've had moments where when you look back on it, it reminds you just how much God is there. And it's helped me to keep the faith and remind me that, he doesn't fail us. He's holding us. He's got us. So this is a really clear reminder, isn't it, from Sri Yukteswar? Has the Lord ever failed you at an examination or elsewhere? And Mukunda says, no, sir, very warmly, and these grateful memories came back in a flood, which was what we've just heard there.
I think it's really important to remind yourselves, even in the good times, that really it's God's grace that's allowing you to have good times. So, for example, if you say, you know, that famous affirmation, thy will be done, not mine. Thou art the doer, not I. I mean, when things are happening well, like for example, you study hard for an exam and you pass the exam, you think, oh yeah, it's because I studied so hard. Yeah, you pat yourself. Chris is patting himself on the back. But if you repeated this affirmation, then you know, thy will be done, thou art the doer, and then you kind of made that a habit and applied that in the good times as well as the bad, then when the bad times come, then you'll just be more accepting to this fact that, you know, it's a test and it's Guruji's desire that I go through this test and God's desire that I overcome this test. So, but to be able to do that, and rather than to go like become depressed when you see a massive challenge in front of you or when things haven't gone your way, you've got to keep affirming this through all the aspects of your life, not just the not just the easy times, but the hard times.
Yeah, that's a good point. As Guruji says, doesn't he? Invite God into the summers of your life and he'll be there in the winters. I'm paraphrasing, but yes. Yeah, it's really important. And also I feel like it makes the good times more beautiful when you remember that it's God, not you. And it adds a special sort of wash over the experience, and a deeper understanding of where it comes from. So here Mukunda has been reminded that it's going to be okay. God is on his side. And then we hear why he's on his side. And Sri Yukteswar says, not laziness, but burning zeal for God has prevented you from seeking college honors. And I was thinking about this a lot today. And I was thinking, you know, if we're not going to be present for something material, the only time it's acceptable to not put effort into like studies or work or things like that is because you're actually genuinely seeking God, right? And the reason for sorry, Priyank, yes.
No, finish your point.
No, I was gonna segue off into the next bit, so please.
Chris, I remember you told me about your schooling efforts or lack of. Did this apply to you? This you know, not laziness, but the zeal for God has prevented you from, you know, studying hard and putting your whole heart and soul into your studies.
I wish it had been. Rhetorical question, Priyank, I think.
No, I don't know.
No?
You didn't.
Oh, really?
You never told me that. It
Well, you
wasn't
see,
because of this.
not to, well, you know, we talked about just before the podcast, you know, talking about more personal things, right? This part would come into that. I was a Christian, brought up in a Protestant faith, and I didn't really understand what was going on because they talked about football half the time. So I was very kind of agnostic at that point and lost, say, for inspiration. So if I had found Guruji back in the day with the teachings and everything, I probably would have. I would give myself the credit to say I would be in that camp. Yeah, I would definitely lean into that if I had the material in front of me. But unfortunately, I didn't have the intuitive wisdom nor the material at the time.
Well, hindsight is a beautiful thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
But Mukunda, on the other hand, is pursuing God with zeal and neglecting his studies. And Sri Yukteswar says, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. And that's a quote from the Bible, from Matthew 6:33.
It's very comforting that he says that. So kind of means as long as you're on the spiritual path, you're kind of doing the right thing. It's never a waste of time. And I feel like was also very comforting for Mukunda here, because he felt like Sri Yukteswar was unreasonable because he did all this work in the hermitage, so he had no time to study. And now he acknowledges that. He said, "You did spend all your time here, and was exactly the right thing. And you will still pass the exam."
And authentically being there because he genuinely wanted to seek God. It's another thing if you're going to go to the temple just to say, oh, well, I was at the temple, so, I couldn't study, but actually you were just there to escape. But here, Mukunda really went every day because he really loved God and he wanted to find God and he wanted to be with his guru. And when he hears Sri Yukteswar saying this about, seeking the kingdom of God and everything else should be added unto you, he feels like his burdens have been lifted by his master's presence for the 1000th time. And I really like that little bit because it's like, the guru helps us so many times, thousands of times, and how special that is, really. So Sri Yukteswar and Mukunda, they have their lunch, and then Sri Yukteswar suggests that Mukunda goes back to the Panthi, and he asks about Mukunda's friend, Romesh Chandra Dutt, and asks if he still lives in Mukunda's boarding house.
I find this like Sri Yukteswar obviously has read the divine scheme, and again, this is a question that he knows the answer to because why else bring up this this studious student because he knows the answer to the question.
Yeah, he knows, but he's got to do the play, right? So Mukunda says yes, he does still live there, and Sri Yukteswar asks him to get in touch with Romesh, and he says that the Lord will inspire him to help you with the examinations. I wonder in what way this came for Romesh. Was it just he just felt like, yeah, of course I'll help you, or was there more of a conscious understanding of, oh, I've got to help this person? Did he have a spiritual experience? We don't know. It's not in the autobiography. But it is a curious point. What do you think, Chris?
It's a curious question, and I would say we probably do know, I would argue, right? Only from our own experience. So I would say to you guys, and to the audience, when you've had a moment where you look back and it feels like God's hands at work, have you had a sense of knowing? And I would say, yeah, probably. You've just done it because it's not you've been in that zone, whatever it is, and maybe you've had intuitive knowing and you've done the thing. It felt certain, like you had to do it. It was the right thing to do. So I would say it probably was something like that. He's almost done it before he realized he did it, and then afterward, he probably look back and think, "Oh, I'm doing this," something along those lines. So,
yeah, but I also feel like God uses people all the time, even when they're not aware of it. Like, I don't think you necessarily have to be spiritual for God to use you for a purpose.
All the time, everyone, everywhere.
Right, exactly. I had quite a few instances when I went to America where strangers were obviously being used to help me in different ways. And it's everywhere. It's all the time, isn't it? And it's very special when it happens to you, or if you get used to help somebody else, particularly if you're aware of it. So Sri Yukteswar asks Mukunda to get in touch with Romesh, and of course Mukunda says that he will, but he says Romesh is usually really busy. He's the honor man in his class, and he carries a really heavier course than everybody else. But apparently Sri Yukteswar just waves that aside, and he says, well, Romesh will find time for you now. Go. So
Receiving blessings as payment.
Yeah, exactly. So Mukunda cycles back, and the first person he meets, who do we think it is? But Romesh. And apparently he's, just acting as if his days are really free and he doesn't have many burdens or responsibilities. And he agrees to Mukunda's request and says, of course, I am at your service. What a lovely thing to say. Yeah,
I remember when I was in university, there was only one subject that I had absolutely no clue in over the 4 years, and the smartest guy in my class agreed for some reason to help me with there was an assignment for it, and he knew full well that he was going to do 100% of the assignment and did not need me in his group, but I was there like saying, "Do you want a cup of tea? A glass of water?" And obviously I
Service
got
for a service.
obviously got
Yeah.
through it, but there was nothing I could do to repay the favor. It was just like a divine, as you say, Chris, it was just like a divine helping hand, and you're just thankful for that when it comes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Mm.
So Ramesh spends many hours of that day, so he doesn't delay, he goes straight to helping him. He spends many hours of that day and each in the next few days coaching him on various subjects. And Romesh says that he thinks that many of the questions in the examination are going to be on the route taken by Childe Harold. Is that how you pronounce it? Chilled could be. It's, if anyone doesn't know what that is, it's a character from a poem written by Lord Byron, I believe, about the route that this fictional character takes. Is that right, Priyank?
Yeah, that's because
Yeah.
I started reading the book, and then I realized it wasn't really worth it.
Yeah.
But I did find out that it was sorry to read listeners that have loved this book, but I couldn't get into it. But the
Burn.
is no burn. To each their own, Michael. But the one thing you should note about Byron is that he created this fictional character that went through these travels, but he himself went to these places that these fictional character went to. So it's really almost like a autobiography, but he's played it out in a role of a character and nuanced it to make it a story.
Exactly. Yeah. So Romesh says, well, we must get an atlas because it's all about travel, isn't it? So Mukunda goes to his Uncle Sarananda's house. He borrows an atlas, and Ramesh is marking the map at all the places that the characters visited. And apparently now this little group is gathering around them, and they're all listening, these classmates, to what's going on. And they're a bit critical, these classmates, and they're saying, well, Ramesh, he's advising you wrongly. And only normally half of the questions are about the books and the other half is on the author's lives. But what I like about this is Mukunda doesn't let their naysaying ways interrupt his faith in Ramesh. And when he sits for the exam and he looks at the questions and he starts crying with tears of gratitude, because he says that the questions that Ramesh suggested are there. They're on the exam. And he said that, he was obviously very grateful to God and to his guru and to Ramesh for that divine intervention. What do you think, Chris?
I relate to this because it's kind of how I felt when I sat down to many examinations. I wasn't quite in a dire position where I was going to scrape through it. I did reasonably okay, but I think many times there was a sweat on the brow thinking, well, these questions better come up. So I kind of, when I read this, you got to laugh and remember these days. I'm sure people have experienced something similar, but for me, yeah, I didn't have a Ramesh quite, but hopefully God was guiding me from time to time.
This he says tears of gratitude flowed down my cheeks when he saw the exam paper. It reminds me of the cosmic chant, whence will that day come to me, mother? Because one of the lines in there is when saying mother dear, my eyes will flow tears. And it's just a really lovely chant, and it's scattered across the autobiography in places like this as well, all of our cosmic chants.
Yeah, you can just imagine that moment, can't you? Mukunda's crying, and the person who's sort of monitoring the exam room comes over and asks, "Are you okay?" And he says, "Well, you know, my guru said that Romesh would help me, and he did." And here they are. And then when he gets back to the boarding house, it's an absolute uproar. And everyone that had been ridiculing him for his faith in Romesh is now congratulating him. What do you think, Priyank?
Yeah, well, it's just fantastic camaraderie, isn't it? It just makes this little section just so fun, because you kind of you're almost in the room, aren't you? Congratulating Mukunda, and when there is like loads of camaraderie, I really do enjoy myself in that fellowship, I must say. And it's good that Guruji's kind of written about it here.
Yeah. It also reminds me of that Bible verse, which I think is in the front of the Autobiography of a Yogi, which says, unless you see signs and wonders, you will not believe. And it's kind of a bit like that, isn't it? Like his friends are all very critical, but then when the good happens, they're like, "Oh,
completely
great, so
Yeah.
happy for you." So it's a bit fickle in a way, but yeah, like you say, it's so lovely that they're so supportive and they've got that kind of camaraderie. Is lovely. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, it's actually just a real insight into the goings-ons of belief and non-belief in God. Everybody wants to believe, but they can't believe that there isn't such thing as randomness, because everything really is God's, in the mechanism of God's universe, let's say. And that concept is too great for us to get our minds around, so we don't want to believe it, because it's too great for us. So funny, as you said, Lauren, whenever there is something that might indicate that it is by God's hand, then we all crumble. Suddenly we all come rushing back. So yeah, it's a great little insight there, isn't it? In such a simple story.
Yeah, and it also shows how likable Mukunda is as a character. They called him Mad Monk, but once they see there's some little miracle happening for him, they all rally behind him because they actually love him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It takes humility to believe, to have faith.
Yeah. And also to kind of say, "Oh yeah, I was wrong." Even if you don't say it in your words, but in your actions, like, "Yeah, I'm with you." It's a really lovely moment. So during the week of the exams, Mukunda's really spending all the time he can with Romesh. And Romesh is formulating questions that he thinks is going to be on the exam. And apparently on the exam, the questions appeared almost exactly the same as what Romesh wrote. And this news just circulated around the college. You could sort of imagine the whispers, can't you, in the corridors? And that it says that something resembling a miracle was occurring, and that success seemed probable for the absent-minded mad monk. So again, that display of God's power, right? And Mukunda Guruji doesn't try to hide it, which I think is a really nice thing. He's letting everyone into the miracle of what's going on. And he said that the local professors couldn't alter the questions either because they'd been arranged by the Calcutta University. So it was all really in hand, and everything seems to be in order and going very, very well for Mukunda. Chris, what happens next?
Sure. Next time we looking ahead, really, we see more twists in this tale. There's another potential setback in the exams that really is avoided, and we see once again the depths of Sri Yukteswar's intuitive knowing of future events. So yeah, a glimpse into that that ability that he has, and we're going to break that down a little bit and have readings on intuition and divine will as well.
Sounds lovely. Looking forward to that. Does anyone have anything that they want to add before we conclude?
Just quick one. Did we cover the section here where he says uncontrollable tears were rolling down my face when coursing down my face when Sri Yukteswar was kind of telling him that you have to go?
We
we cover
lightly
that?
touched on it, but do you want to add something about
It
it?
just feels really just not I just wouldn't expect it.
Yeah. I
It
thought the
feels like
same, yeah.
a really visceral kind of human reaction to how insurmountable his challenge he thinks is going to be. Feels like that's the kind of thing that you or I would, that's how you or I would respond. But this is like,
Yeah.
for context, this is like after his experience in cosmic consciousness, for example, isn't it? But yeah, he's still so in touch with his human side.
Delusion's strong, right? And he kind of can't see past Maya as to why this is necessary, but Sri Yukteswar can. You know, that's the thing. It's constantly pulling our attention from where it should be.
Yeah. And it's also this, you know, we keep saying he's just playing the part. It's we don't know when he is just playing the part and when it is that he was actually genuinely you know, moved by this occasion.
Yeah.
It's hard to figure that out, isn't it?
We know there's stories of Yogananda telling off, wasn't it Sridhar Mata, the story is, and when he was pacing back and forth, when he would pace towards Sridhar Mata, he would be sort of scolding her and sort of scornful looking, and when he would pace back, there was another monk or a nun there. I can't remember the perfect detail of the story, but they could see that his face was softened and smiling and kind of winking, and you know, so on the face of it, you know, from one perspective, you could write the story in one way that, you know, he was completely involved and, you know, cross and angry, but actually he knew what was happening as well.
I do wonder though, in this case, if it's both, you know, like he is playing the role, but unaware at that point in time that he's playing the role because he has to for everybody else's sake, right? For our sake reading it, but also for the people who were there even. I wonder how many people went further into their faith from seeing the miracle. You know, it's when you get let into an insight of God's hand in someone else's life that can really inspire you.
Could have been any one of us.
Well,
Who knows?
yeah, right. You just don't know.
If we maybe had met Guruji in previous lives, you know, the devotees, who knows?
Who knows? But I'm looking forward to next week and delving more into the next part of the chapter. So thank you all so much for a lovely episode, and thank you to everyone who listened and tuned in, and we look forward to meeting again next week.
Jai Guru.
Jai Guru.
Jai Guru.
Jai Guru.